Good evening, America, and welcome to the first feature-length episode of How to Lose Friends in 60 Cards or Less, the Magic the Gathering show where we teach you how to build decks that break people. This week, we're looking at a budget commander Krenko deck, and as a special treat for YouTube, we've got a plugged-in microphone, the full 99-card deck list, and ladies and gentlemen, we've got technology, so we don't even need these cue cards. Thanks to Krenko's lovely little ability, which lets you double the number of goblins you have by pumping out a bunch of 1/1 tokens every turn, you are going to be shooting out so many low-effort clones that your opponents may think you are a SoundCloud rapper. But that also leaves us very, very vulnerable to board wipes. So one of the first cards we're putting in this deck is Bogart Shenanigans, because tokens technically go to the graveyard, folks. The more you know. They go to the graveyard and then they disappear because of rules and bullshit. But since they go to the graveyard, every time somebody ditches one of our tokens, they're going to take 1 damage. So if you get Krenko out and you make a whole heaping mass of goblins and somebody board wipes you, they're out of the fucking game. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before you and your cloned goblin tokens can turn your table into a frat party, you need goblins to clone. And that, my friends, is where the Expendables come in. This gutter trash is going to make up nearly all of your starting creature lineup. And to make it into this deck, they had to pass 2 grueling tests. 1, is it a goblin? 2, is it cheap as hell? Nearly all of these creatures are only in the deck to be a goblin on your board that costs less than 10 cents. But there are a few notable exceptions of creatures that can be useful. It just doesn't matter too much if they die, so they're still technically expendables. The first example is going to be the Keldon Overseer, one of the only exceptions to the Goblin Tribal rule. And he's in here because of his kicker ability, which lets you steal an opponent's creature for a turn. And I don't care what you say or what you think, that shit is always funny and you should always do it. As a rule, don't play this man if you can't kick him. What? He's a 3/1 with haste? Nobody cares. But if you can take somebody's commander, even for a turn, they'll never forgive you. And that is what we are about. Next, our first taste of combination fuckery is going to come from combining either the Subterranean Scout or Goblin Smuggler with any combination of the Weaselback Redcap, Teeter Peak Ambusher, and Goblin Banneret. And that's because each of these 3 creatures have only 1 power, which means using the Goblin Smuggler or the Subterranean Scout, which is a very similar ability, you can make them unblockable. And then, using their ability, after no blockers have been assigned, you can pump them to high fucking heaven. Now, is any of that morally defensible? Absolutely not. But is it legal? Yes. And so we're going to do it. Our next honorable mention goes to the Goat Napper because he can also steal shit, but he's very limited. Wait, you say, my opponents aren't playing any goats. I don't think there are any cards in this game that are goats. And you would be right, but there are cards in this game that are changelings. And changelings are everything, my friends. And so changelings are motherfucking goats. If you sit down and across the room you see somebody playing Morophon the Boundless, who is an Eldrazi commander, that motherfucker is a changeling, which means he's a goat, which means he's our commander for at least 1 turn. Next up, we've got the Foundry Street Denizen. Now, this one can actually be useful if you get him out in the late game once your Goblin machine is already up and running, because every turn he will pump as much as you get goblins out. The only problem is he's got 1 toughness and no way inherently to get around blockers, so he is just going to die fucking immediately. After that, we have got Squee the Immortal. Now, he is going to be useless all of the time, but he's also playable all of the time, which means you will have at least 1 other goblin on the board with Krenko at all times. Finally, we have the Goblin Matron. Now, she's only useful to be played. Once she's on the board, let her die. We don't care what happens to her, but she lets you search your library for a different goblin card and put it into your hand. Now, say it with me, folks. We are tutoring Pashalik Mons every time. I don't care what the board looks like. I don't care what the state of the game is. I don't care if you're about to lose and there's 1 other goblin that would save it. You are tutoring Pashalik Mons. And that is because our boy Pashalik does two very important things this deck always needs. One, he is another line of board wipe insurance, and two, he can make more goblins, and we need things that make goblins. In addition, unlike Boggart Shenanigans, Pashalik Mons damage can be applied to any target. So if you're losing goblins and you don't have enough to take somebody fully out of the game, you can maybe kill their commander, kill one of their super important creatures. It's just more versatile than Boggart Shenanigans is, and you can proc it yourself by spending mana. All these individual goblins are great, but playing one goblin a turn is small money, and small money doesn't piss off your nearest and dearest friends, and so that is why we've got the breeding pen. Some of these are very straightforward. Dragon Fodder, Goblin Rally, Goblin Instigator, the Beetleback Chief, and Krenko's Command are all just there to do what it says on the tin. Give us extra goblins per turn. There are a couple standouts though. First being Krenko Tin Street Kingpin. Now this man is great for two reasons. One, he makes you goblins while pumping himself, and two, he is going to draw removal to clear the way for the mob boss. Don't get it twisted. The mob boss is infinitely more important than this man, but you also cannot leave this fucking man alone. He's a legendary creature, so you know he only does bullshit. And so if people want to hold removal for your commander, they're not going to be using it on him, and then they're going to die anyway. So that is why we love this second version of Krenko. Next up, we got the Siege Gang Commander. Brings in 3 friends with him. That's fabulous. What we really love him for is that sacrifice ability. Sacrifice 1/1/1 Goblin token to deal 2 damage to any target. That is return on investment, people. That is return on investment. For standout spells, we've got the Goblin War Party. Now, this is only a standout because it gives haste. My good people, there are no words for how important haste is in this deck, because if you're playing Krenko Mob Boss, whether or not you are playing a budget deck, everyone hates you. Everyone knows what's coming. They know the board is about to drown in goblin tokens. So if you do not have a way to tap Krenko on the turn you play him, you are not tapping Krenko, okay? He's gone. He's Thanos dust. He's nothing, all right? You need haste. Now, finally, we've got Empty the Warrens, which is going to be the ultimate Uno reverse because it has Storm. So for every spell that gets cast before this spell on your turn, you get an extra copy of this spell, which means 2 more 1/1 tokens. Now notice, people, notice it does not say spells you have cast this turn. So if you can bait somebody else into fucking with you with a lot of instants and then lay this down, you get a whole fresh goblin army off the back of their labor, and that is pure capitalism. Now that we've established how you're going to make your goblin army, we got to figure out how to turn them into the oppressive, game-ruining force that we know and love. And people, I mean it when I say that there are no blocks allowed with these goblins, okay? This core group of 10 goblins is here because they either buff up all your tokens or they give all your stuff haste, and we need that shit, okay? All right, we got the War Driver. He's giving every attacking creature +1. We got the Motivator. That's only giving 1 creature haste. That is for Krenko. I cannot say it enough. That is for Krenko. We got the Rubble Fort giving everything haste. We got the Battle Driver +2 and haste. We got the Lookout, sacrifice a goblin, everything gets +2. Listen, you people get the picture. This is how it works, all right? Now, the only goblin that is an exception to this is the Goblin Assassin, and this is some of the best fuckery you will see in this deck. So with the Goblin Assassin, when you play it, or any time another goblin enters the battlefield, everybody flips a coin. If that coin flip is heads, nothing happens. If that coin flip is tails, you sacrifice a creature. So once the clone machine is online, you are going to have people flipping hundreds of coins, right? And if you lose your flips, it doesn't matter. Sacrifice the tokens. If they lose their flips, they are going to flip the table. And the sacrifices do not stop there. We got the Goblin Crater Maker, which you can dump to either deal 2 damage to a creature or destroy a colorless permanent. And I swear, if you use it to deal the damage to a creature, we are going to have words. Alright, this deck has many ways to deal damage. It has very few ways to remove permanents. So you need to save it to get rid of an artifact. After that, we have got the Boggart Forager. This mana is not very useful unless somebody tutors something to the top of their deck and doesn't draw it, or if they scry something. But if they do that, you can ruin their day. Now, 3 of these cards should look very familiar, right? Pashalik Mon, Siege Gang Commander, and Goblin Trashmaster. We have seen these all before. I want to assure you, these are not extra copies, all right? These tag groupings are just to help you think of what these creatures are useful for. So it's still only 1 copy of each of these. They just have multiple uses. Like the Trashmaster, he goes in no blocks allowed because he's giving all your goblins a +1/+1. But you can sacrifice a goblin to destroy target artifacts. So if you bring this deck against an artifact deck and you get goblins to sacrifice, that person will never forgive you. Not until the day they die, all right? They are going to have beef with you forever, and that is the type of shit I love. Now, we've also got Magma. He is doing basically the same thing as Siege Gang Commander or the Resolve effect of Pashalik Mons, but you're just sacrificing a permanent, dealing 1 damage. Now you will notice all of these things cost mana. If only there was some easy, quick way we could get mana, and that is where we come to one of the most important cards in the deck, funnily enough, at 25 cents, the Skirk Prospector, because you can sacrifice goblins to add red mana. So as soon as you are in the tens of goblins range, you can just start dumping these men to get shitloads of mana and then using anybody else from Sack Gang to do a bunch of damage. Now, there are going to be some cases where you don't want to activate Sack Gang and you don't want to risk all of your tokens in combat because certain colors, mono black, are going to punish you for letting your own creatures die. And that is why we have the Battle Squadron. The Battle Squadron's power and toughness are equal to the creatures you control, so you can get a 30-30, you can get a 50-50, and you don't have to risk any of your goddamn tokens. Now, this card already has flying, which means you got a pretty good chance of connecting the hit, but we don't want a good chance. We want guaranteed salt. So we are going to pair the Battle Squadron with the Frenzied Goblin, pair him with the Clamor Shaman, or pair him with the Goblin Shortcutter to try to take out opponent chump blockers. Now, if you are playing against somebody who is running a flying token deck and they have like 30 1/1 flyers to block with, that sucks, bro. I don't know what to tell you. Gotcha, bitch. I know exactly what to tell you. You're going to play Warstorm Surge, and you're going to use Krenko to make a bunch of goblins, and you're going to kill all their tokens, and you're going to laugh all the way to the goddamn bank about it. Final enchantment we are bringing to the board is Quest for the Goblin Lord, because it is very cheap on mana. It is going to give all your creatures +2/+0, and all you got to do is have 5 goblins enter the board. And people, I cannot promise you much. I cannot promise that you will win with this deck. I cannot even promise you will have a good time. I can promise you will play 5 goblins a game. The last couple spells we're bringing are going to be ways to capitalize on the critical mass of goblins you have hopefully achieved at this point. Both Brightstone Ritual and Battle Hymn are going to give you a bunch of red mana for having creatures or for having goblins, which is 99% of your creatures anyway. Now, because these are both instants, a fun thing you can do is hold these as a response to a board wipe, and then you can play it, and then you can use all the mana to sacrifice all the stuff to kill the person that played the board wipe, and they will be very, very sad. Now, for stuff you can do on your turn, we have got Burn at the Stake, and this shit is busted, people. This is strictly busted, because if you get a bunch of tokens out, you tap all of them, you're dealing triple damage for the tokens, right? You need 14 creatures total to kill somebody from full health. With Krenko, 14 is not hard. 14 is bottom of the barrel. And that, my friends, is the whole deck, but we are not quite finished yet. As I said, this is a budget deck. The whole thing is only about $30. So on the sideboard, I have 11 cards that would be great additions to this deck, but were just a little bit too expensive this time around. I'm going to call out my favorite ones, or most impactful ones. First up being Coat of Arms. Every creature gets +1/+1 for every other creature that shares a creature type. This deck is 99% goblin, so I'm sure you see where this is going. This takes the critical mass of goblins you need to kill somebody from like 15 to like 4, dude. It's absolutely insane. After that, we have got Anger, because if you throw him down and you just force somebody to kill him, or you chump block with him, everything you play will have haste until the end of time, which is fabulous. After that, we've got the Thornbite Staff and the Staff of Domination. What we're using these two things for is to untap creatures. These are going to give us access to infinites with Krenko, which will make everybody quit the fucking game. That's all for tonight on How to Lose Friends in 60 Cards or Less. The deck link is in the video description below. If you try this deck out, make sure to tell me how many friends you lose. And if you already play this deck, let me know in the comments if there are any combos or cards that I'm missing out on. Thank you all very much, and stay toxic.